Okay, so we're here with Representative Willy Chotzen. Brian's here. He doesn't have a microphone, so I don't know that he gets to talk. I guess I'll share mine. But we actually have a connection. I don't know if you know this. We both have a Hollywood connection. I'm named after a famous actor, Ronald Reagan, who went on to become governor of California, president. You're named after a famous movie, Free Willy, right?
Yeah, named after the whale, actually.
The whale.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. My real name is actually Willy, which my parents, they made a choice. I think it works when you're a young kid, and it works if you're an old man. But you get to the middle professional period, and it's a little bit tough to make work. But I'm sticking to it.
You're sticking to it. How do you mind if I ask how old you are?
34.
34. Okay, yep. Great. So too young to run for U.S. Senate. So you decided legislature, right?
You know, I think U.S. Senate is 30, right? But I'm not.
35 is president.
Yeah,
you're right.
But I'm not that ambitious. I love it. This was the first time ever running for office. Was 2 years ago when I ran. And I love it. I absolutely love being here.
So what's your? I told your staff a lot of people have this. We think about it as like, why are you running, or why did you run?
Sure.
And but we just shorten it to what's your why for being here.
Totally. Well, I would say professionally, two main career backgrounds. I was a public middle school math teacher. Then I left the classroom, went to law school, and then moved back to Oregon to be a public defender. So 2 years ago, or a little bit more than 2 years ago at this point, I'm a public defender, and all the political issues on everyone's mind are homelessness and addiction and mental illness and crime and all of these things that I am working with, like hands-on in the system. Felt like we didn't have any public defenders in the legislature. Like that perspective of people who are actually working with these populations was missing. So I ran for office for the very first time and was lucky to get elected, and I love it.
First off, I'm also, have some name ID, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks of Allen Iverson, and they always ask me, is that a brother, an uncle, or something like that? So just FYI.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it.
Especially when I'm on the East Coast. People all the time, because Iverson's not a normal name on the East Coast at all, but I'm over there, I was like, oh, Iverson. And I'm like, oh, yeah, brother. Little brother is what I say, brother.
Yep.
Okay, timeline me, though, real quick, because you're 34. You were elected in 32, and you were a math teacher. Then you went to law school, so you practiced law for all of 12 minutes before. And do you still practice?
I'm not currently in public defense office. That feels like a tough job.
But you don't practice
so I'm still barred, but I'm going to go back to it. I'm not done forever. But my kids are 3 and 4, so I promised my wife, if I do this, I'll be leaning into parenting as much as I possibly can, leaning into session, and then I'll add something.
So she must work.
She works, yeah. She's a public educator. She was a teacher. Now she works for the school district.
Did you guys meet teaching?
We didn't. We met the first day of college. We had dorm rooms across the hall from each other freshman year. Friends for 3 years. Started dating.
What college?
Washington University in St. Louis. So St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that where you're from?
My dad is from there, so I have family reasons to have headed there. But no, I was born in Oregon, lived in the Seattle area, and then California. Wow. Parents are in California.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Kids 3 and 4, what, boy, girl?
2 boys. 2 boys. 4-year-old, be 5 next month. Yeah, it's great.
I have 2 boys.
Nice.
18 and 20.
That's insane.
So you got a fun road ahead of you. It was a blast. It's the greatest thing. Reagan and you both have young kids. But
how old are your kids, Reagan?
I've got my oldest is 7, and then he's a boy, and then I have girl in the middle, 4, and almost 5, and then the youngest just turned 1. So
nice. You have 3.
Yes.
You can't play man-to-man defense.
No.
You got to do a zone. Okay.
It's zone defense.
Okay.
And we're learning we're not very good at zone defense.
That's hard.
We're going to need to get better.
Yeah.
When I always ask, like you and I, we had a conversation. I don't know if you remember it. We were in the parking garage.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, do something that people don't expect you to do.
Yes.
Like policy-wise. Like I'm in childcare now.
Yes.
Because my senator loves to work on childcare. And I was like, why are you doing childcare? Like, this is insane to me. Because
absolutely,
it just seems like a horrible field to try to do policy work in.
Yeah.
Because it's tough, right?
Yeah.
And then I've gotten into it. And he was like, no, but it's economic development. It's not childcare.
Totally.
I need the workers.
Yeah.
And so now I've been totally immersed in childcare. And I've realized through that process, like, how important childcare is to the economic development system. Because we need young people working. Because both you guys work. Reagan's wife works as well. She works better than Reagan. But, I think, but they got to bounce the thing too. Because Reagan's got to watch. And then if not, you got to hire a babysitter. So you're probably paying a couple of grand this month for babysitting fees.
We are. We've got both kids in daycare, preschool. When our kids are both in public school, it'll be the biggest raise of our life to not be paying those costs anymore. Yeah, it's insane.
That's what I really learned. That 0 to 5 is oh my Lord, expensive.
Yes.
And super needed. Because how could you take 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years off? Because maybe if you have 3 kids,
completely,
you're kind of in that flow. You can't really get out of it. You don't want to leave the system completely.
Yeah.
Because then you kind of lose that professional development that you're going through, because your 30s is kind of important.
Yep.
I mean, you kind of jumped the line to the legislature. You, Jamie Kate, there's a few other ones. Lindsay Senator Campos now, she's really young. But there's some of the really younger ones that kind of jump the line. It doesn't happen very often.
Totally.
Especially in like kind of usually in the deeper blue or deeper red seats, you don't see it happening that often.
Yeah, totally.
So that's kind of cool. So it's great to have you here. But that's where childcare for me. So my question really is like, what are you kind of working on that's maybe not in your wheelhouse? What do you feel that you're gravitating towards?
Yeah, I love the question. Well, let me bounce off on childcare for one sec, because one of my favorite kind of ways to look at things is what we think of as radical and what we think of as normal is just totally arbitrary or subjective. And not only is childcare important for economic development, it's when brains are most developing is in those first 5 years. And it's like the one moment from 0 to 18 where we don't provide as much support to families is in those first 5 years. So want to work on childcare long-term, actually. Haven't done much with it yet and would love to. It's a great question. I would say this year I've been most focused on things related to the federal government. I've really taken that on, which tends to end up getting more partisan, but it's legally interesting. It's creative work. There was nobody who was focused on it because we're dealing with issues that are a little bit new. But last year, one of my big bills was data privacy. And a year ago, I knew nothing about data privacy. But I came into the legislature and I was trying to work on an issue, and I ended up kind of gravitating towards it and seeing a need. And then it landed in a spot that was about banning precise location data and banning the sale of kids' data if they're under 16. But that was something that we passed last year in my first session. We passed it unanimously in the House, unanimously in the Senate. And I knew nothing about it on the day I got sworn in. That was all developing as I was in the legislature last year.
I think sometimes people go, oh, you have these different folks in the legislature. You got a lot of lawyers on judiciary, right, on both sides of the aisle. And sometimes you want that issue expert. But sometimes on a really tough issue, it's actually really good to just put like a Republican and a Democrat together that don't know anything about the issue. Totally. And they come into it with clear eyes. They don't come into it with a bias. They come into it with basically the average person's understanding. And I think that's what's so great about like a citizen legislature where you have that, you don't have endless amounts of hours to go research that. We're not, you're not in session all the time. You have a day job that you're going to go back to. You have your regular life. And then you pop into these like really controversial issues and go, whoa, calm down, guys. There's a really simple way through and it's right here. Or you have to take the time to wade through the issue like you did. I mean, was data privacy hard or was it just complicated?
It was complicated and it was new to me. I think once I passed that bill, people assumed that was like an issue I came here to work on. And it ended up intersecting with civil rights and First Amendment issues and all sorts of things I knew more about. But when I got into it, I actually had no idea it was going to take me there. I think you're exactly right, Reagan. Like there are things where I think of it as like not trying to get positional, right? Like I think the power to convene is one of the coolest things you can do as a legislator. You can get everyone to a table and you can say, all right, here's the problem. Do we all agree on the problem? All right, where are we trying to get? And then we start figuring out what the solution actually looks like. The more you know an issue, I think the easier it is to know what you think the solution is. And then you're trying to negotiate everyone there. The less you know an issue, the more you're trying to just figure out how do we get everyone to the same spot. I think that's really cool that we get to do that.
Will you keep Facebook from knowing that we had this podcast and then they suggest you as a friend?
It's crazy.
Isn't that wild? Yes. Like when you go somewhere and then all of a sudden you see in your reel or whatever and it suggests somebody that was there at the same store, the same thing you were.
Completely.
It just that stuff's too creepy for me. And is
creepy.
That kind of the thing?
It's exactly the thing. And let me tell you, and I'll be totally transparent. Here's how I got to this. And this is an area we're probably going to disagree. And some of you, right? I got to it. Trump had just been elected. People, I represent a super blue district. People are scared. And so I was looking at things like abortion and thinking about how do we make sure someone's not tracking who's, coming in from Idaho. They're going to a Planned Parenthood in Oregon. They're driving back to Idaho and all of that data is being tracked and sold. That's how I got to this issue, to be totally transparent. But then you start looking at it, and I'm talking to a Montana super conservative Republican senator in Montana who's saying, our data is our property. This is a property rights issue at its core. And it's a whole different lens, but it's arriving at all the same conclusions. And a lot of it's just creepy. It's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry where what we click on, how long do we scroll on Instagram or TikTok or Reddit or wherever, what do we hover over more? Our phones are measuring, are we standing up? Are we walking? Are we lying down? What kind of content are we going to want depending on the position of the phone? And sometimes, that's giving us content we want better, which I think people feel mixed about, but it can get really, really creepy too.
I think just in my interesting way you came about a bill, we all come about bills in those interesting, like normal contexts of life. And then you go, oh, wow, this is a problem, but how it's expanded.
Yes.
I'm more important to worry about than the other part. But
totally.
But knowing how it expanded, because I think you're right, because I want to have the ability, I believe, to either say it's okay.
Yes.
Like fine, because some stuff I'm fine with. Like if I click on a sponsored ad on Facebook and then they're sending me shit for the next, I keep saying I'm going to get flagged because I keep cussing, but Reagan doesn't like it when I cuss. Oh. But
one of the weirdest parts about becoming a representative is when people swear on me, they then apologize to me as if all of a sudden that's the thing I would care about.
I know, right?
It's fun.
Well, it's not me. I did it more for the podcast.
Sure.
If we swear too much on the podcast, then you get flagged, like on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
And also on.
What about the children listening? What about the children?
If there's any children listening, turn it off and go play a video game, please. This is not boring. But I just think that with the shopping, like I'm totally fine with that. But I think the other stuff where I'm not knowingly saying it's okay to show my location and suggest friends to me. I get pretty creeped out about that. My bank account stuff, I worry about, like if I'm on my phone because it has a Face ID, like how if I'm on a Wi-Fi I didn't know about at the airport and I log in because I wanted to make sure a check cashed, and then that sort of stuff is, I think you won't find a bigger fan than somebody like me who's kind of a libertarian at heart.
Totally.
So I'm just going to be like, whoa. Big government is not the answer to a lot of this stuff.
Totally. And where it intersects with consumer protection stuff too. Like there's interesting stories where, maybe you've looked up funeral arrangements in a city and then you look up airline tickets for the city. And if they're tracking all of that, right, and they've got their algorithms running, they might know you're going to pay whatever you need to do to get to that city because clearly it's really urgent that you get there. And all of a sudden your costs just went up. That's a crazy new. I mean, I think we've just seen that pop up. I'm going to at least look into it. It's something other states I think are starting to look into. It. Surveillance pricing is the name for it.
I'm seeing the Instacart and the Walmart and those kinds of things. So
that's bad. That's bad stuff.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find, like, what's interesting about that is around here, and we had a bill last session. It makes me think of the same thing where we just had a staffer here, and I'm not always the biggest fan of staff bringing their bills, but in this case, I thought it was okay. We had a staffer here who could only unlock his apartment with his phone, and his phone was dead. Yep. And so he was sitting in his car charging his phone to get into his apartment. And we're like, that's kind of crazy. And so he asked his boss, and they brought a bill, and it was like, hey, you have to provide a secondary entrance option for apartments. And it passed because everyone was like, like there wasn't any opposition. It was like, maybe it was just something that we hadn't thought about or whatever, but everybody was just like, yeah, that's crazy. We're going to fix it. Yes. And you run across some of those things where it's like the legislature still has that almost like, we want to innovate, but we're still slower. And then sometimes we go, that doesn't make sense. Well, let's pull back a little bit.
Totally.
And so I love to see those kinds of things happen in the legislature because it's kind of like the one time you can go, hey, there was common sense in the building for 5 minutes before it immediately runs away.
But now we're getting Luke 2, which is, well, I need access to the laundromat, the pool, like and
is that his bill?
Yeah, it's coming to your committee.
I have some questions. You guys, it sounds like you guys worked that all out in Senate Housing. I'm sure it'll be fine. So I did want to ask you. You're one of I didn't even count here. I don't know, like half the Democratic caucus in leadership.
Sure.
But first, you're in your first session, right? And you're in leadership, and you are. So your title is Assistant Majority Leader. You're one of 4 that have that exact title. It's you, Representative Highfam, Representative Fragla, and Representative Evans. And so do you guys have like assistant majority leader sub assignments? Do you guys draw straws? Like, how does that work?
It's a good question. The other 3 are all assistant majority leader for politics. Okay. And then I'm our one assistant majority leader for policy.
Nice.
So one of my main assignments was taking the first draft of our caucus agenda. So I met with all the different members and talked to my colleagues about, all right, what are the most important things you think we get done next session? Talk to different stakeholder groups, hear from them about what they want to get done. And then it's the challenge of, all right, what are the things we've got basically no money to spend? We have 35 days of session, and there's 37 people, and we're a pretty big tent party. What are the things we can all agree on that are hopefully popular with voters, doable, good ideas, things that are actually being worked on?
Did you just say big tent party?
Big tent party, I did. Am I going to get called out on that?
Look, they have at least one Republican in their ranks, right? That's a 10.
There's some big. I mean, we had a floor debate yesterday that split up our party's view on things. I think there's a wide variety of viewpoints.
More, don't you? That just tangent.
Yes.
Don't you think we should have let more bills that we don't know are going to pass to the floor and have some of those debates? Don't you feel?
Yes.
I feel that's a little more democratic and a little bit more open government for both sides.
I think it's good for democracy. I think it is good for voters to know where people stand. I think it is more exciting to have a debate where you don't already know the result. I mean, I can give you the opposite arguments, right? One opposite argument is we've got limited time. So are we going to waste time on things that we don't think are going to have the votes? And then there's a choice to be made about if we don't think it doesn't have the votes and we're not going to pass the policy, are we making people take a bunch of public positions on things that they don't need to take, right? If we're really kind of looking behind the curtain, I think that's part of it. I get those arguments. But yes, I think that it is good for democracy to have those debates out in the open.
But if you're staff,
yes,
and we have to watch you guys on the floor,
yes,
we love it.
Totally, I like it too.
Nothing better when you're voting and you're looking at the vote count, you're like, oh, what's Greg Smith gonna do, or what's so and so gonna do, and it's wild and it's crazy. You know what?
Yes.
Don't do it all the time.
Sure.
But you got to pick a handful of bills.
Yes.
Where maybe everybody's kind of divided and just
And on the one yesterday, I spoke up on it because I knew it was a live issue, and that's so much more exciting. If I'd known that everyone knew their vote already, I would have stayed quiet. We would have kept moving on. But I thought maybe, I don't think I did, but maybe I'm the one who's going to push that argument over the edge. And so it makes for much more exciting debate. I like it too.
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's good.
I'm with you on that.
All right, so let's wade into one of the bills. So,
sure.
And we have the number on a piece of paper. Which one of the bills is dealing with withholding resources from the federal government?
That's my bill. That's called the Recourse Act.
Okay.
We passed it off the House floor today. I'm pretty sure I'll go back and check, but complete party line vote for everyone.
I think
who was
that's
there.
right.
All Democrats voted for it. All Republicans voted against it.
Yeah.
41-43. Yes, 41-43. I will say I won't call out any names. I'm going to respect confidentiality, but I've talked to several of my Republican colleagues who say, look, I get the idea. If this didn't have the partisan kind of tint to it that it has, I would actually support the concept, but it feels like this is about Trump and I'm not going to vote for it. So I think the idea is not as crazy, but it ended up being a party line vote.
There's always secretly a bunch of the legislators in the president's party, regardless of who the president is, who are like, I'm not sure about that stuff, but I'm going to be pretty careful. And you kind of understand that because of the politics of that can be very challenging for them. And especially if they're legislators you want them to come back. Totally. You don't want them to lose a primary or whatever over something silly like that. And so you just go, oh, yeah, it's fine, but we'll let you off on this one. So walk me through it, because I think if I'm looking at that and I didn't pay any attention to this bill, I'm just watching it. We're talking to you about it really for the first time. I watched a tiny bit of the floor debate, but I have other stuff that I have to be doing at the same time. So I'm just in and out. Yeah. So my first look at it is Trump is being very aggressive about pulling back resources on things. I think kind of basically his rationale is that even if Congress has authorized dollars to go somewhere, he has the power of the executive branch, and he doesn't have to distribute those dollars if the current Congress agrees with his strategy, and he just does an executive order. And so the money actually kind of bounces up against his executive order when it gets distributed, right? Is that kind of the impetus to bring this forward? Because you probably don't bring it forward if he's not doing that.
Spot on. So I to this date, I think there's at least $4.6 billion that he's withheld from Oregon communities that then Oregon Department of Justice has sued, and we've won, and that money is actually coming to the communities. There might be even more that's been withheld that we've never gotten, but that's the $4.6 billion is the amount that we've theoretically protected in court and gotten released to Oregon. And I think that's the argument that he's making. More often than not, he's losing in court. And up to this point in time, when he has lost in court over something like funding, he's eventually released the money. So the Recourse Act doesn't apply in any of those scenarios. What it would do is say, same situation, he withholds money, we sue, it goes to court, judge rules our way, but the federal government doesn't follow the court order. If that were to happen, it's a mechanism of us withholding money that's going back to the federal government. So it's a big move. It's not lost on me that that's a big deal. But there's a lot of guardrails in the bill, and I think the first guardrail, maybe the most important one, is it doesn't even kick in at all unless there's been a federal court order that's being actively not complied with. So still up to the federal courts to figure out what's lawful and what's not lawful.
So, and then walk me through, what kind of resources are we withholding? Is it just everybody's, is it just general income tax revenue? Is it what are we withholding?
Yeah, great question, Megan. So it's not income taxes. What other states have tried, and this is an idea floating around in at least half a dozen, probably more at this point, Democratic legislatures around the country. Most of them have said like state employees' income taxes. So you work for the state is going to, withhold some of your federal taxes and then send it along to the federal government. That felt a little bit risky to me. Risky in terms of passing through the building, legally risky in terms of it holding up. So it's just direct payments from Oregon to the federal government. So we make dozens of these every year. Let's say we got a grant from the federal government and we didn't spend all the money before the grant period expired. We would be contractually obligated to pay the rest of it back to the federal government. And we should, right? We owe that money back lawfully. The idea here is if they owe us money that they're unlawfully withholding, let's keep the money we owe them safe until they pay us, and then we'll pay them.
Because and the color of money in government matters quite a bit. Actually,
it does.
You can't just go, okay, like if I owe Brian $100 and then he buys my lunch for $100, we don't have to do an exchange at that point. We just go, oh yeah, we're even or whatever, right?
Yep.
Or actually, I think at that point I owe you $200 because I don't know how money works.
Yeah.
But here the color of the money actually matters. So you guys can't just zero out and be like, yeah, we're even, we're good. You guys will have to do that exchange at some point. But you're just saying, while we wait, we're just going to hang on to this.
Yeah, the idea is this legal principle called offsetting debts. It's a super old concept. Every state, in the country has some, offset, law, and the federal government has used it, or at least has authorized it. It could be used against states before. So it is the basic concept: is you owe me money, I owe you money. Let's balance out the difference. Totally right about the color of money. I think the idea here was we get our payment and we release all the payments back. We're not spending it. We're not, appropriating it. It's just going to sit in basically the equivalent of like an escrow fund. But the idea is if we get to this spot where they're not paying us our money and the courts are saying they have to, and they're basically giving the middle finger, let's keep our resources in Oregon until they start following the law, and then we'll release the money that we owe them. That's the idea.
Well, I guess you have no idea because it's fairly new, right? I mean, as a mechanism to try to, clearly it's a pushback against President Trump, and it's political, and I get all that. Totally. It's fine. I mean, we would do it if we were a red state and it was Biden, and he was withholding money. So I don't have a problem with that because politics is part of the game.
Sure.
And I get all that. Is there a sunset clause, or will this continue regardless of who's president moving forward? Because I think it's not a bad tool for a state to have just in general, because we should also have it against other states too.
I agree.
Because we have a lot of Washington residents probably that are state employees of Oregon that live in Vancouver because they don't want to live in Portland. Yeah. We know that. Nobody does. They're all moving to Vancouver.
We'll table that. I love Portland. But keep going.
That was a subtle dig. Just a subtle dig.
I'm not agreeing with that, but I agree with
I was getting to try to get you to agree with that.
Yep.
Dang it.
Yeah. It was a good shot.
Yeah.
It was a good shot.
Totally.
Vancouver's going to become the second largest city in Washington because of how horrible Portland is.
Like every 6 months I go on Threads and say, why is Vancouver nicer than Portland? And it blows up because everybody gets so mad.
It's so funny. It's fun to poke at Portland.
Sure.
I grew up there, so I can. I feel like I love it. Ability.
Great food, great nature.
So it'll continue, right? There's no real desire to.
So originally, yes. And I actually was hoping I could ask this question, never did, but it was important to me that this wasn't like just a political moment in time. So I do think it's a tool that makes total sense. It's based on fairness. If we had a Democratic president, Republican governor, and the Democratic president was withholding money from Oregon and then being told by the courts to release it and not paying it, I would want us to have this tool. Mm-hmm. I ended up amending it and adding a 10-year sunset. I didn't want it to be a sunset. I know. And here's the thing.
Caved.
The thinking is, I compromised. The thinking is that, it's a new tool. And it's not just about this one moment in time, but let's reevaluate in 10 years, see if we've ever used it, see if it feels useful, see if it still feels relevant. And, otherwise 50 years from now, I'm gone, you guys are gone, everyone I worked with in state agencies and all that to get the details right is gone, and they're wondering what this law is about. So
watch out for the Gutton stuff in 2027 where he sneaks in removing the sunset clause. You gotta watch for that.
I was fine with it with no sunset clause, but compromise is part of how we get places.
At least you did keep it on through the JD Vance presidency, so I appreciate
it. Rubio. He just gave a big speech, and everybody's talking about Rubio. People are starting to switch it up.
I haven't heard the speech yet, but someone's texting
I'm supposed to go watch it too. I've seen a couple of clips. I think that I like the 10-year sunset because it's an acknowledgement that this or it's not. It doesn't date exactly with the current president's administration, right? It goes beyond it, as Brian's talked about. I think the other thing that's interesting to me that I want to talk about. Shoot, I just lost my question.
I didn't even know. I honestly have no idea about your bill. I was just I just made that question up. So
it's a good question.
I just want to talk how great I was to think that you didn't have a sunset on it, but because I'm pretty brilliant on that.
Yeah.
Is there the pushing back against the federal government? I get why states do it, and I understand what. And Dan Rayfield, I like Dan, and he loves to sue the president at the cost of state taxpayer money, but
4.6 billion protected, but I think it's a high return on investment.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I know why he's doing it. It's fun, and I think he likes running around telling everybody he's suing the president on stuff. And of course, I get all that stuff, and you get the politics. That's why, and Dan also gets the politics, which it's fun to talk to him and talk about that sort of stuff, because I do want to know the why, because I think deep down under layer, I don't necessarily know the why either. So that's why bills like this, when you get down to the core, if you just core out the politics, I don't think it's a bad policy.
Sure.
And I think that's what you're saying in regards if there was Republicans, and I'm a huge supporter of President Trump. I was at the inauguration and everything. And I know why he's doing what he's doing, because clearly he doesn't like states that didn't vote for him.
Sure.
And clearly there's some policies that we have that fly in the face of what he feels he got elected for. So I think there's a lot of that, but I don't mind the pushback, and we got to be a little bit better, I believe, to push back. In this building, I want to push back on the core policy and whether it's good policy, not whether it's good or bad politics.
I agree.
And I think that's kind of, sometimes we have to just put the two in two different lanes.
I agree.
And just say, because there's always, everything in this building is politics. Yeah. And if you came here because all you want to do is do good policy, then you're in the wrong building. Go be a commissioner or something. Because this building is politics.
Sure.
But sometimes you can find good policy in and around the politics. And I think that's really, except for maybe $15.99. But outside of that
we can talk about that.
Oh, that'd be great. I would love to hear your thoughts on why moving would be great, but I don't want to divert from Reagan's agenda. He probably has one, but we can maybe save that one for when it comes over to the House. We'll see if it gets through the Senate first.
I'm willing. I'm just putting myself out there. I know
that's great. But that's where I really, in my mind, my policy, because I'm a political guy, so I do a lot of campaigns. I'm involved in a lot of that stuff. But when I'm in the building, I really do try to get at the core of the policy. Yes. Because it does have to withstand the politics.
I agree. To me, the core mission is to get the policy right. That's the part of this job I love most. And then the politics is how you get good policy passed. The politics is how you, if you're not sure, right, that might be a tiebreaker situation where it's really unclear what policy is right, and that's going to weigh in. There's no part of this job I hate, other than I think the amount of time it takes away from family. But the policy is the fun part, right? Getting good policy passed is the fun part. And then I feel like you got to figure out the politics to be able to do that. And to be able to keep doing that, to be able to come back into this building and not just do it once and then be done.
All right. Make the Democratic argument for moving the election. I think it's a great question. Sure. So if you want to talk about it, and that's the stinger too. Yeah. Is we'll put it in the title or the thing to help get people to listen. What is the argument for moving the election?
Here's the argument. I don't think I made a friend doing so, but I quoted actually Senate Minority Leader Bruce Starr in committee in 1999, similar situation. There was a gas tax on the ballot. Where the gas tax was passed.
The majority Republicans run this out, right?
Republicans are running this, absolutely. They passed a gas tax. They thought it might get referred. They said, if you refer it to the voters, then we want to make sure that referendum happens in May and not in November. And the person who carried that bill that says May, not November, on the ballot, on the House floor was Senator, but at the time Representative Bruce Starr. And basically he says, look, if voters are going to vote down this referendum, we want to have all summer to be able to build, right? We want to be able to unlock that money and start doing projects. Not the same projects, right? I would argue this is road safety and potholes and all of that, but I think there's a chance that the referendum gets voted down, and if it does, let's get people to work actually fixing our roads and bridges and all of that. If it fails, let's get everyone back to the table and start figuring out what we're going to do on the transportation budget, because we're not done. But we've got 6 months between May and November, and if it's on the November ballot, we spend all 6 of those months arguing about the politics. If it's on the May, we get some closure, we find out what the answer is, and then we've got 6 more months to actually figure out the policy.
So because I think, what's his response, or have you seen how he's responded to that?
He did. I think he really pointed to the difference between what he felt like was the process of the transportation package,
which was maybe doing it in advance and saying it versus doing it on the back end.
2 main things. One, he said that was a bipartisan package. Sure, that's a difference, but I don't think that's a difference that goes to the core of this argument.
Okay.
The other thing he said is exactly that was not ahead of time, and that's true, right? It's not the first time that we've ever, after the fact, gone back. I don't have the years in front of me. I think 1975, and there was another year I could find it. So
they moved a January. They did a January election on the hospital tax because they got referred by former Representative Parrish.
Yep.
And there was concern about healthcare budgets. It kind of implodes your healthcare budgets if you don't do that. So they did pull that one.
Well, I think the last 5, the 5 most recent, and it's not exactly the same, but the 5 most recent that have been like revenue related referendums have all been either May or January or February. They've all been prior to November. So that's not uncommon. I think part of the argument that Republicans are making is this is after the fact. I think the voters were loud and clear their voice want to be heard on this, right? And I see that November was on that. I do think what the conversation looked like was more of a conversation about, do you want to have a chance to vote this down, than it really was about, when do you want to vote this down. So I see the paper they signed. We're getting copies of it every day. I think for the average voter,
who's doing that?
It's good. It's well coordinated and respect, right? That's totally fair game. But I think the average person who signed, and they made their voices heard, and it was an overwhelming response, and credit to everyone who organized that. But I think they mostly wanted to make sure their voices were heard. I think trying to get those voices heard as soon as possible so we can figure out the policies, it makes sense to me.
I think that's fair, and I like how I think you did a good job of...
You think that's fair?
I think that's fair in the way that you framed it in terms of your guys' argument for it. And I also I think you did a good job with Senator Starr's argument as well, which I always like. I think a good politician and a good policymaker understands both sides of the arguments, even if they don't agree. And so I appreciate that.
The question, I know you're, but real
quick.
I've
got friends who want to run in the primary. And so sometimes this will help a few of them too. So
the question, that's true as well. I think it depends who's running and who it's going to help politically and who's not.
Totally.
And the question I ask every lobbyist on almost any bill is what is the strongest argument the other side is making? And so quickly whether they give you an honest, they've really spent time with that argument, or whether they're trying to kind of softball it or haven't spent time understanding the counter argument.
Okay, so Brian and I.
Yep.
Do you have anything else on gas tax?
Oh yeah.
Go for it.
And then I've got our closing question.
All right.
Coming up with the closing question.
First, Senator Starr, when he was representative, that was in the bill. So to put it on the May ballot,
it was a separate bill, but it was prior to the referendum.
Everybody knew, and then the one that was passed in the special session by Democrats didn't have any of that in there. So the referral made it clearly spelled out. Yes, I will stipulate I would agree with you that most people don't think they even have to vote again on it. They probably think they voted it down by just signing their name. So that's probably, so I'll stipulate and give you that. So I think those are my counter arguments to Bruce's was no, because this one was clearly said November. And it's very clear that the governor does not want this on the ballot in November. It's very clear, and you guys don't want a Republican governor at all. So it's very
give him a chance.
No, come on.
It was a correct assumption.
He's a party guy. So it's very clear that I know you have to make the educational argument, but the political argument does not hold mustard with me. And the educational argument, I'll stipulate and give you that, but the political argument is not even in the realm of true, because you don't want to be, if you were in a swing seat like Mark Meek, who voted the one vote that got it over the finish line, and you have to defend that vote against somebody running against you in November with the ballot, you don't want it on there either. Now, it doesn't hurt Mark Meek as much as I think it hurts the governor, because it was her bill, her special session. She berated you guys for not getting it done in the long session. So I get all that. So the political stuff, I'll just push back on that politically, it makes way more sense for you guys to have it in May.
But let me flip that around on you. I appreciate everything you're saying. And I think that in terms of, in May, you've got a super competitive, contested Republican primary. We don't have anything like that turning votes out. Nope. You've got voters who really want to strike this down. I don't think the passion index, even for people who want the gas tax and the transportation package, the passion isn't there. So I think there's a strong argument it's even more likely to pass. In other words, our transportation package is more likely to be struck down in May than in November, right? So from a policy standpoint,
fail in both elections.
Fair, but I think
However, on that point though, I'll give you this: it helps Ed Deal in the primary, and I had this argument earlier with people like Ed Deal, because being really the face of it and now running for governor, for him to be the face of this in May is really good for his election. When I've heard he's trailing by a lot behind Drazen, so he needs something to propel him to a finish line in May. And so for that, I'll totally agree with you. If you're Ed Deal, you actually quietly want this in May because you need to win the primary.
So here's my question. Is it not just politics for you all, right? If you think it's going to fail in May or it's going to fail in November, what's the downside to having it fail sooner other than
well, of course it's politics. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Okay, great. But I think, but like, again, I go back to the ideas like this building is politics. Sure. We all know that. Sure. And I think that political idea of having it go in November, but that was originally intended in the referral. And that's the only thing that I can, from an educational standpoint or a policy standpoint, I had to hang on that. But absolutely it's political. And that's why I love the argument. Because it's a political argument. And the sad part is well, because it'll pass, it'll go in May. I know you guys got the votes, you move it out, you do everything that needs to do. Tobias will do what he needs to do to make it happen. We're just never going to know what would have happened if it was in November. That's, for me, is always the bummer, is like we can never know like what would have been the outcome. It's always such a bummer.
Sure. I like our governor's re-election chances either way, for a lot of reasons, and among them, this is a Trump mid-year election and everything we're seeing federally. But I hear you.
So here's my question, and this is what I'm going to try to come up with, because we're trying to cover. There's a lot of podcasts to make the interviews interesting. Try to ask an interesting question, but I still think our listeners.
I thought it was.
I think we did a good job. Go ahead. I like to add to it. Yeah. So I think 2 questions. 1. Every statewide office holder resigns tomorrow. Would you run for something?
Ooh, fun question.
And then the second one's similar to that, but legislature.
I mean, my first question is wanting to figure out why they all resigned, because there's something there. It would have to start with a conversation with my wife. I love this work. Like truly, I joke sometimes. I think I'm like the happiest legislator, but like I feel so lucky to do this work. I like it even more than I thought I was going to. And my kids are 3 and 4.
Right.
And so my hope, voter willing, right, is that I get to do this for a long time. I'm down to do other roles one day.
Yes.
But I am in absolutely no rush, because the goal is for it to be sustainable and learn what I'm doing and get better and better at it. And to your point about policy areas earlier that you don't even know you're going to get into, there's so much you get to learn in this job. So I think all the statewide positions are super, super interesting. But it would have to start with a conversation. I'm not trying to not give an answer. It's classic politician thing to do.
It's definitely dodging.
But it would start there. It would start there for sure.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
State over federal.
State over federal for sure. I mean, among other reasons, and there's family reasons for that too, but among other reasons, like we can get so much done here. I mean, I think right now, I honestly think that a good state representative right now can probably have more impact on people's lives than a lot of U.S. senators, because we don't have the same amount of gridlock. If you have good ideas and you work it hard, you can get things done.
So here's what I think could happen. So Rayfield goes to the U.S. Senate because he really wants to go to D.C. That's a nice little role for you to kind of slide in, draft him behind him. And, there's no Republican running. So, yeah, sure, you got it. But I think that plan is...
We said, but we keep extending it.
Yes, I absolutely endorse Willy Chotzen in the Democrat primary.
No, I appreciate it. I think it's an interesting job. There you get so many different parts of that. I mean, all of these, right? Secretary of State is dealing with elections, but also dealing with corporations and so many other things in between, good governance, and Attorney General, right? You're suing, but you're also giving legal advice to agencies, and you're also appealing prosecutions, and it's interesting how many different things we ask of the same role sometimes.
All right. So the second one is similar, but it's closer to home. You really like the legislative work.
Yes.
Every committee chair resigns tomorrow.
Sure.
And the speaker comes to you and says, I need you to take a gavel. Which one would you pick up?
Okay. If I want to make a difference, I think I'd be dumb to not go for Ways and Means. If that's
totally. That's a good answer too. That's such a good answer.
In terms of what I came here to run on, and the kind of issues that I feel passionate about that are close to home, judiciary for sure.
Yeah.
I'm vice chair right now, but if that gavel ever opened up, I think that's an area.
That's what I would have guessed too.
But I'll throw one more your way.
Okay.
I'm not even on any of the education related committees.
Yes.
But I'm a former teacher. My wife's an educator, and we've got a real puzzle. I had a long conversation, with Rep. McIntyre the other day about education policy, and there are real substantive issues to be solved.
Oh yeah.
In how do we get our schools better? My older kid's going to be a kindergartner next year in Portland Public Schools, so I want to get into that space, and that's a really appealing space too.
That's great. I think education would be a good, and I didn't even think about that with your background and your wife being a teacher and stuff. I think that would be a great spot for you to kind of weigh into as your next thing after you deal with all the data privacy stuff.
Sure.
Weigh into, but you can do multiple things.
Totally.
You got good staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they can weigh in and stuff. And if we actually got our act together here, allowed us to hire 2 full-time staffers year round, it'd sure be nice, wouldn't it? Versus, hiring them and then firing them and then bringing them back.
I know. It's a hard way to keep great people.
It really is. Yeah.
I don't my compromise. I just want to stay calm.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Representative. It was great having you on. I think we had a couple of good laughs there. It was fun. It's fun to go into areas where it's a little odd for each of us, and we like to do that. Reagan and I both enjoy mucking it up with the Democrats and stuff, so it's kind of fun and mixing it up, and it's good. It's good.
Anytime.
Good discussion.
It's really, really fun getting to talk to you both. Thanks for the work.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.